congratulations to all of you. What a stunning, exciting, and really funny film. Truly just such a joy to watch and rewatch. And Paul and Tony, if I can start with you, I wanted to ask you about the development of this project, because I hear that it's been in development for about 10 years. Is that right? Can you tell me a little bit about what was the original idea and how it changed over all that time?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people had approached us to do an Eminem documentary, and he didn't want and doesn't want to do a standard look back at my career documentary. He feels like that's something people do when they're either at the end of their career or it's done for them when they're gone. And so he just wasn't interested in doing that. So we had to think about a way to look at the idea of using him as a subject for a documentary, but just differently. And that's how this idea came about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was exciting. It was the idea of exploring fame and super fandom, and then, you know, ultimately also an artist, but through this unique lens and entry point. And, you know, Paul had such a great vision for what this should be and also what it shouldn't be. And the key was to find a director who could take that ball and run with it. And Antoine Fuqua introduced us to Stephen Leckart, who really just got this and really...
Yeah, and we met Antoine because we worked on Southpaw together. So when we were looking for people to sort of surround the idea with, we approached him to bring him into the circle, and he introduced us to Stephen.
And if I could bring you into this, how did you convince them to give you the job?
That's a really good question. It's probably better for them than me.
You had a hell of a pitch.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yeah. Well, Antoine knew that I was raised on hip hop in the 80s and 90s, and I also grew up on MTV. So I witnessed his rise firsthand, and I was a fan. But I think I just kept coming back to the song "Stand" and really thinking about how unconventional it was, and still is. And I just saw an opportunity to make an unconventional doc. And I think Paul hit it really on the head that, like, we've seen a glut of docs that are just so straightforward and standard. And so this was a beautiful opportunity to do something different.
And Paul, I wanted to ask you, because you worked with Eminem for such a long time, and you must have seen his fandom and the fans that have supported and loved his work for so long, so up close. What surprised you the most from the making of STANS?
When we were getting the submissions and we started interviewing people, I originally thought that we were going to see a lot of people just sort of gushing about him, how much they loved him, how much they wanted to be like him, how much they had identified with him, but I didn't anticipate the impact that he had on them. And I think that was the most surprising, just seeing how much he affected their lives in a positive way.
And Stephen and Tony, sorry, I wanted to ask you, because you were the president of MTV during the rise of Eminem, during the very moment that the film explores. Do you remember noticing a shift in real time as his fame grew and the fandom grew?
Yeah, I think like from day one, I still remember the day I was with Carson in our offices, and somebody from the music department walked in with the My Name Is video, and we were just like, oh my God, this is like, totally different artist, different sound, and also just a different visual expression. And that was so key to MTV, was the visual expression of music. And so it just sort of took off on TRL, which I was the producer of at the time. TRL was the show that was the Times Square thing that you saw here. And it just, the fans got bigger and bigger. And I think for me, it culminated at that moment. I think it was the Friday that 8 Mile was opening up, and you saw in the film, and Eminem had the #1 song in the country, what was about to be the #1 film in the country, #1 album, and I think the #1 video that day on TRL, and was probably #1 video for a long time after. And just seeing the crowd outside, that was the next level for us. That might have been the first time that we had to actually bring the shades down, because the police department told us it was just getting too crazy outside in Times Square. So I think that's where I really started seeing, like, wow, man, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I always talk about the little anecdote of reading in Rolling Stone during the making of Gangs of New York, seeing Daniel Day-Lewis talking about how he was pumping himself up for Bill the Butcher character by listening to Lose Yourself. So it was like transcending demo, and fandom was just a wide range of fandom. So it was just an amazing time, an amazing artist.
And Zolt, can I ask you? I mean, we see you talk about your love of Eminem in the film, but what was your first experience, and what was your impression when you got approached to be?
My first experience in the documentary.
Yeah.
Well, that was in 2014. I thought first I thought that was someone who do a joke on me. I thought that was a fan, you know. It was on Facebook. He sent me a message, "Hey Zolt, we got a project. I'm working for Shady." And I was like, "Who are you?" I'm Ben. My name is Ben. I'm working. I don't exactly remember what he said. It was in 2014, and that was 2 weeks after the Wembley show. Okay, and I really thought that was someone who wanted to joke on me, and I said, "Look, I don't want to lose my time with a guy like you." So, and he said, "Hey, check my name on Google, and we'll see if you find something." And I was like, "All right, let's do it." Oh, he gave his name on Google, okay. So I was like, if I don't know this guy, what kind of fan know this guy? So I was like, all right, man, I think that I believe you. Here's my address I made, and a month later, I was with him in New York.
And Stephen, you mentioned a little bit about how you got involved, but what is your own personal experience of Eminem and his music?
Yeah, I mean, I was in college. We call it university in the States. I was a freshman, and I told Paul this story when we met. Basically, my friend had a burned CD that he had stolen from Napster of some of the early Eminem tracks, and we were from Los Angeles and grew up on NWA and Dre, and he was like, popped it in and was like, "This is Dre's protege," and didn't tell me anything else, and we listened to the whole thing on like a 5-hour car trip back to back, and I just was like stunned. I just was like instantly pulled in. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, he's a white guy from Detroit." And then I saw him on MTV probably like 2 weeks later, and that was it. I just was like, this guy's really special. So years later to meet these guys and get involved was kind of bizarre, to be honest.
And do you remember, or did you feel like you had to revisit that fandom in those years as Eminem's kind of rise to fame?
Yeah, I mean, being a documentarian is amazing because you just go pour through footage. You do tons of research, you read article after article. And so to do that on a subject where you're also just so, you remember pieces and parts but not everything, was like a dream.
And Paul, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about him in the film is sort of about him as well as the relationship between Eminem and his fans, but how involved was he actually in the shaping of the film?
Yeah, so, he sort of oversees everything. He's given notes, he's given music notes. There may be some edits even after this because of stuff that he keeps thinking of. But, we couldn't have obviously made the film without the art he created, right? So it's kind of a very meta question, because the song he created, Stan, begat the song, the film and the documentary, and, so he's not like a hands-on producer where he's, scheduling shoots, but certainly knows what was going on, sat with Steven, went through the whole idea and concept, and gave it the thumbs up, and has been reviewing cuts and, the stuff people do when they make a movie.
And Stephen, was there, and I guess maybe this is a question for all of you, was there any moments where you thought, oh, there's no way that we can include this, but then they did end up in the cut that we've just seen?
Well, definitely the ending. So we do the interview, and he was like, everything that you see in the movie, it was so special. And at the end of the interview, towards the end, he does this whole monologue, is what you saw in the movie. And that's not edited, that's just purely what came out of him. And then we went out and shot those beautiful postcards that fit for what he said. And I just remember being in the edit with our editor, Marcella, who's here, by the way. Shout out, Marcella. And I remember just like, it's beautiful, it's just like, oh, it's so special. And then we get to that last line, and I remember saying vividly to her, are we really gonna get away with ending the movie with eat a fat dick? And yeah, exactly. And then we agreed that if anyone pushed back, we would just tell them to eat a fat dick.
Did anyone push back?
No one pushed back.
Excellent. I was before this all started, I texted my team saying I'm so happy our first screening is going to end on that line.
It was perfect.
And I wanted to ask you guys as well, how did did you spend this entire development time, once you nailed the concept, once Stephen was in place, was it then that you started reaching out to fans? And what was that process like? How did you find and pick the right people like Zolt?
Yeah, we had an open sort of casting call online and asked people to submit videos. But prior to that, we had just sort of been, through our own experience and the fans that we had the opportunity to interact with, like Zolt, had started sort of shooting on our own, almost for like a sizzle to put together to help sell the documentary. And that's why, Zolt was talking about 2014. That's how long ago we started this process. Yeah, so through, word of mouth, people we knew and interacted with, and people that would show up a lot, right, Zolt?
Right.
Like always.
Always, man.
Yeah.
Just a question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
How was like the reaction when they talking about to select me? I mean, who took the idea?
Everybody.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What?
How did he get picked?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Oh, because you showed up a lot. And you look similar to Marshall, particularly like recovery area Marshall, and you dressed like him a lot, and you seemed very dedicated.
I'll add, the casting process, we got, in like 4 months, we got over 9,000 submissions.
Wow.
From all over the world. And one of the first things we just said is, we're pretty good on French people. That box was checked.
But
No offense.
that being said, you're the only fan sitting up here.